Hello everybody, it's Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
And if we've got this right...
You say that every time.
I know. This is number 262 in Sounding the Shallows.
And if it isn't, it will be.
Yes, it will be. So, last week we were talking about the trees and the wind, and I won't even try to say what that's about to people who don't know. And we've had a couple of interesting responses to that, and we'll come back to those probably next week. But in the meantime, we have had a most interesting response from somebody else about a couple of other things that we've been talking about.
Well, yes. I mean, this is not that week, but the week before, and obviously scones have created quite a
We'd better say
flavour.
briefly what we said about scones.
Well, we were talking about how we went to a garden centre and didn't just have a cheese scone or a jam and cream scone. We found there was a wonderful thing called a scone platter in which we got both, including cream cheese and chutney and cream and strawberries and fruit scones, and I'm sure you're drooling by now. And this lovely email that we had said she was so hungry by the time we got to the end of our scone story that she just scoffed a large bowl of chocolate porridge and 2 chocolate brioches at the same sitting. No mean feat for a person of 5'1.5" inch who's used to a slice,
and half an inch,
half an inch, who's used to a slice of toast. So I don't know. I quite fancied her. Well, I don't know about the chocolate porridge, Adrian. Have you ever had chocolate porridge?
I don't even know what chocolate porridge is.
We'll have to try. But she also...
Oh, yeah, she also commented on a story we told about how we broke somebody's
unfired
fired pot, and there was no one around, and we had to decide whether to run and not tell them or hang around, which we did in the end, and ended up spending a lot of money.
But
anyway,
I'm sure that triggered off in other people those moments when you just could have maybe got away with something. What do you do at that moment?
Well, it reminds me a bit. I mean, the whole thing about, does God see everything?
Yes.
Reminds me of the story someone else used to tell about as a very young person or young teenager. Their group leader said, "Now you must remember that God sees everything you do." And he said, and I was constipated for a week.
Gosh, I think God has better things to do.
Well, I think we know that, but when you're that age,
I know.
You think.
I know.
Anyway. So
again,
this person said,
same people.
Same person said, I'd have probably legged it.
Yes.
In your pottery situation.
Yeah. But then she was talking about how she, and I think it must be her husband, it's certainly we, were looking in an
Do you think he's an incredibly tall man?
I don't know. Looking in an African art shop. And what?
No, nothing. Sorry.
What were you going to say?
I'm wondering what that is.
But I think it's an art shop that has wonderful African art.
Okay.
And she said, I can't even remember how I did it, but somehow I managed to knock over a lovely wooden sculpture of an impala, which is one of those beautiful little deer that we saw in Africa, causing one of the antlers to snap off. Well, it had a very hefty price tag, and she said, to cut a long story short, rather than we, and that's her husband as well, decided to buy a rather overpriced mirror with an elaborate wooden surround in an effort to ease their conscience. She said, I often wonder when I look at the mirror, which is in the hallway, whether the person who owned the shop ever suspected it was us who left him with a one-antlered impala, or whether he ever managed to repair it and sell it on. And she said the only reason that she's been able to reduce her guilt and reason away her crime is to convince herself that the mirror was jolly overpriced anyway. I just wonder how many other people, even hearing this, think, oh my goodness, I've just remembered a time when it wasn't perfect. She then talks about a wonderful visit to a hotel quite near us, actually, and that they were upgraded. This is a lovely story, to a beautiful room, and she was going to unpack and then found there wasn't anything that looked like a bathroom, And then, this is Narnia all over again. She opened the middle wardrobe door, which had a mirror on it, and a whole new world opened up.
The bathroom.
The bathroom. At that moment, I was sort of picturing snow and fir trees and Tumnus and all the rest of it, but no, it was a bathroom. So it was a very nice bathroom.
That's the way to go then. You crash into an Impala and ruin it, and God gives you an upgrade.
I don't think the two things happened straight at the same time, Adrian.
No, I know.
But anyway, thank you for that. And we do love the emails. And as I say, we'll have a look at one or two of them about the wind and the trees maybe next week.
Yeah. So, yes, another week full of danger and doom.
I don't think we can talk about it. It's just so frightening. But
what did come across, or I did come across, was an interesting paradox, right? It's not a new one. And just before we go any further, my little cosy friend G.K. Chesterton,
who also said about the wind and the
he was the one who,
trees.
as a child, believed. He defined a paradox as the truth standing on its head. So when you look at the inverted truth, you see something so startlingly different, and have to realise it is the same thing.
Okay.
And
that is a paradox.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for instance, one of his paradoxes was, and I know our son David, having heard this one, saved it up for when someone in the classroom, a teacher, mentioned anything connected with it, because he wanted to sound so he knew about things. So this one is, if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing badly, right? Now, some people said Chesterton's paradoxes were easy stuff, and they meant nothing. This one, if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing badly, means that if you enjoy something and it gives you pleasure, or is good for the family, or whatever it is, it's worth doing, even if you don't become experts at it. It's worth doing badly. You don't.
Yeah. Some people might feel DIY doesn't quite fit that category, Adrian, but maybe they would.
Well, in my case, it's a total waste of time.
Exactly.
Because doing DIY badly is not a very good idea.
Well, that's what I meant.
But anyway, that's what all about. Anyway, the paradox I was thinking of, and is a biblical one. I'm afraid everybody wants to vomit when we get onto the religious side. That there are two requirements, right? I reckon, and everyone else can argue with me, for those who want to be Jesus followers, right? The first, which is not usually the one that people think of, is to be loved, right? And we're going to be doing a weekend somewhere in a day or so where we're going to actually be looking at that as a first principle, that because we meet so many people, some who've never been loved, some who know what it is to be loved, but cannot believe in the love of God. And second, is to follow him and do what you're told.
Yeah, but I mean, I think for a lot of us, Adrian, we think, well, I'll just follow and see what happens, and we learn to be loved. So I think if you think I won't even start until I feel loved, you might be sitting there sort of going over and over and over and over feelings that will remain until you're part of
You might, but it might be worth us as a body learning how to teach about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that is calling you is not someone saying, when you've sorted yourself out.
Oh no, absolutely. That's the other way of looking at it. Yes, of course.
It's expressed in many poems and pieces of writing that we love.
Yeah.
That what God is saying is, I want you.
Yeah.
I want you.
Yeah, like you said when somebody said to you about being a father and you were worrying about it because of aspects of your childhood, and somebody said to you, they don't need a good father, they need you.
That's correct.
And I think that does apply, doesn't it? We don't need a good, perfect
God is
Christian.
not looking for good Christians.
No.
because he wants us, right?
Yeah.
So is that a paradox? Because
Is it?
it sounds a bit constricted. Well, if you suppose you believe that, oh, I'm loved, oh, this is good, and then you look at the other bit, which is that you follow and you do what you're told, and I can tell you that is what's the word? I can't remember what it's called, but it's it's an absolutely central thing.
Oh, I see.
That you do, and it gets more complicated actually. I sound like that man in Fake or Fortune, don't I? It sounds even more complicated.
Well, enough people know that Fake or Fortune is a program about paintings.
That's right,
that have
may or may not be genuine.
May or may not be genuine. It's
a
wonderful TV program, but that's,
anyway. So, the narrow way, right? Famous in Christian circles for being the way you're supposed to take, the narrow way. According to Jesus, it's hard to find, and not many find it. We don't hear a lot of preaching on that,
No.
do we? So it appears one great big paradox that why is it so hard to find? I mean,
and have we actually found it?
Well,
Are we on it without realising
why
it?
does the God who loves the world so much that he gave his only begotten Son that they might learn John 3:16? Why does he make it so difficult to find the way to him? What is going on? But the thing that has occurred to me recently, and I don't know what you think about this, is that the thing about the narrow way, the reason it's so difficult to find is that it's right in the middle of everything.
Okay.
It's not an isolated winding path that you have to find the first part of. It's in Tesco's. It's in the house next door. It's wherever you follow. That's the narrow way.
I think that's right. I think I'll tell you something I was thinking today, which is coming at it maybe from a rather odd angle. But I was shopping today and I needed to buy a pack of paper for us to do some printing. And we also needed tea bags. And I bought this big box of tea bags. Right, hold on. And when I got home, I opened the box of tea bags and I stuffed the container that we have tea bags in full of tea bags. And I thought, I can do this in this country. I could just go and buy a massive box of tea bags. And of course, we're all thinking about food security in parts of the world where that just isn't the case. And then I remembered a time when we were hunting for one tea bag because we desperately wanted a cup of tea. And that one tea bag became really, really precious. Right? Hold that in your head, because then I was thinking with this big pack of paper, and we've already printed off stuff we don't need, and we're going to have to print it off again. What a luxury my big box of tea bags and my big pack of paper are, but they're not valuable.
No.
And when I was thinking about the paper, I was thinking we were, if you remember, in a little school in Zamtan, which is a tiny area of Zambia, very, very poor area, because at the time AIDS was just decimating the society there. And we went to the school, didn't we? And we were speaking to the headmistress, and a teacher came in and asked the headmistress for a piece of paper, which she took from her pack of paper. Do you remember?
Well,
I think it was two
the
pieces.
headmistress had a
She had the pack.
A pack of paper that we would recognise on the desk in front of her.
Yeah, like computer paper.
And she was there to distribute the treasure.
She was. It was treasure. Yeah. It was treasure. And then I was thinking about the two boys walking 9 kilometres to school because it was a treasure. Yeah. And I think that you talk about turning the truth upside down and the paradox of it, but if we think of the narrow way as being so difficult to find, this business of where your heart is, there will your treasure be. Well, if we really want to find Jesus, we'll find we're on the jolly narrow way, I think. Or is that silly?
If we follow him, yes.
Well, I think that's what I meant.
Yeah,
if we're following him.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But you see what I mean? That it's so hard when we live in a society where we have access to things, and even if we're really hard up, and we have been at times in our life, and I know quite a lot of people who are really hard up, there's always a something that will lighten it.
Yeah.
But when you've only got, I now remember your mum, for example, who had the ability to find enormous pleasure. We used to go to buy a primula for the garden in the springtime, and she and I would spend ages choosing the one. We'd only buy one each.
Yeah, I know.
It was precious.
I know.
So is there some connection with that, Adrian?
I don't know.
That it's not a tough thing, the narrow way. It's something that we want to find because it's so precious.
It can be a very tough thing.
Yeah, once you're on it. Yeah.
But
that's true.
No, but I was thinking when you were saying that about what we learned about the preciousness of common things there.
Yeah.
Because that same school needed a vehicle, didn't they?
They did.
And we said to her, probably if we went back home and we said to our church or a group of churches, we could get together enough money for a school bus or something like that.
Mm.
And she didn't reply as positively as perhaps we thought she might, because she said, I don't think you understand that if we have a bus, we have to have a driver. If we have a bus, we have to have petrol.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
If we have a bus, we have to have it fixed.
Yeah, because of the rough
wrong.
roads and the
So when you say that you would like to help us to have a bus, actually, and she obviously understood why, because things are so different here. In the end, it was a huge amount of money that was needed to keep that going. So it's a really good lesson, isn't it? As you're saying, that the things, little common things can become very precious
if you haven't got them.
Yeah.
And you say about being loved. Well, I mean, if you don't feel loved, then to be loved is a treasure. It's not something you have to earn miserably.
Yeah. I must say one other thing about the narrow way that it's been nagging at me is that I think you get a better view from the narrow way than you do from anywhere else of everything. The problem is that consciously we have pushed the narrow way into a funny little place over there.
Have we?
Yeah, I think we have.
Well, I think one of the troubles in the 80s was that it was just, I'll come back to that. I was just going to say, it was that it felt as though every church thought that they were on the narrow way and that no one else was.
Well, I think they define narrow in a very different way.
Yes, exactly. So that's all I'm saying is, so that's a different way of thinking about that, because it used to drive me bonkers.
It happens the same with everything we talk about in the church at some point, that a thing that is really important is taken and made inaccessible.
Yes.
For some reason. And sometimes because, as I say, the word narrow means something quite different with some groups that we've encountered. But it actually is right in the middle of where people are. We read that piece by Starrett Kennedy on here a while ago.
Yeah.
About him saying if the churches don't understand that you've got to go out where people are and be with them.
Isn't just there.
That's
He's
right.
not among the lilies at the altar, which I thought was just brilliant, really, yeah.
There's no narrow way there.
No.
It's out where it needs to be and where it needs to go. And that's why I think he has said at one point,
it's not easy.
count the cost
Yeah.
of what you're saying you want. You want to follow me. Are you sure you really want to do that? Because I'm going to take you to places that you never even thought of. And we know that's true.
And we don't just mean physical places, do we? I mean places in our minds, our emotions, our hearts, where we don't want to go because it's going to be difficult.
I don't know about other people, but getting older, I don't think, for me anyway, it's not a gentle coast into something peaceful.
I have noticed that, Adrian.
It's a rumbustious, awkward stumble to what? To be straightforward with myself about myself, and I don't about some things I don't find that.
Do you think that's
really
partly
easy.
because there's less distractions as you get older?
No, I don't know.
No?
No,
Okay.
I'd welcome. I mean, it's not because.
I meant business and
I'm
reinforcement.
I'm really
of who
interested in what I'm doing and what that means about. It means you shed a lot of things and move on more quickly perhaps than you're thinking. I don't know. You get a bit confused about it at that stage.
But it's interesting because I think, because of things like the rich young ruler and everything, you feel you've got to shed it all when you're young in order to follow. And as you say, when you get older, you find it's a different sort of journey and you have to do it all over again, really, or keep doing it.
So what are you shedding at the moment?
Well, I might not even tell you.
Oh, all right.
Anyway, I want to reinforce that we do love getting the emails and that we'd love to hear from you and that in the middle of what is a really, really terrifying time, I don't know, there's, Jesus can still be followed, the narrow way can still be walked on because there's somebody next to you who needs you.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
I love the paradoxes. I love them. I want them to stay. I think they bring light and life to people, situations they always have. So.
And we'll speak to you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.